The big news is there are new managers in baseball. Derek Shelton gets the Twins job, Blake Butera gets the Nats job, and Craig Albanaz gets the Orioles job. And the Mets have a front runner for their new pitching coach. Oh, and the Dodgers won the World Series. It's This Week in Baseball. Okay, that's not the big news.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't think anybody really cares about who's managing the Twins next season right now, today, here on Sunday. I think we're all kind of recovering from that postseason and that World Series that we enjoyed. Obviously, there is a bunch of news, but I kind of feel like today it's relatively irrelevant, like who the managers are of these new teams.
You don't want to hear the fact that the A's had the worst attendance in the major leagues. That doesn't surprise anybody, right?
Or that Craig Albanaz is now going to be the Orioles manager, which congratulations. He was the bullpen coach over in San Francisco and the bench coach for Cleveland, so he's now going to be the Orioles manager. The Nats have gone really young with their manager, picking Blake Butera, who's
33 years old.
He's the youngest manager.
He's Sal's nephew and Drew's cousin or something like that. So
obviously, then a couple, previous to last week, it was announced before this. I don't think we've just been on the air since then.
Right.
Torey Vitello has been signed over in San Francisco. So it seems like teams are going younger with all of their managers. We had a lot of young guy signings here, but we saw an old hand get it done in the World Series as Dave Roberts and his Dodgers won a back-to-back titles. And Dave Roberts, by the way, has clinched his position in the Hall of Fame as a manager.
Couldn't agree with you more. That's his third World Series, and the only people that have won 3 World Series that are not in the Hall of Fame are going to be in the Hall of Fame, and that's Bruce Bochy. And I think that it's pretty certain that Dave Roberts, who did a very good job managing the World Series, but let's kind of go back through the World Series itself. Because I'm going to ask you the question after we talk it through. Is this the greatest World Series that's ever been played?
Going to be up there.
That's tall stuff right there.
I mean, but if we go to Game 1, it was a close game. You had Trey Savage versus Blake Snell. It was exciting. It was an exciting game until it kind of wasn't, as the Jays just seemed to kind of be on top of Snell the whole night, and when he didn't get off to a good start in that game, you kind of knew it was not a good thing for the Dodgers, and it was 11-4 in a hurry. It felt like, and that game was just over.
I don't think they won any of Snell's starts in the World Series, did the Dodgers?
No.
But not that he pitched terribly, but I guess they feel as an ace, this guy's supposed to dominate the competition, and Blake Snell, I'm sorry. Snell's a great pitcher. This was a great series, and I don't really blame him for not winning the games that he started.
No, but they lost Game 1 pretty decisively, which was interesting then going into Game 2, like, okay, what's going to happen here? And then Yamamoto the out and started what I believe, if he's not already been announced, will be announced as the
he's the MVP.
He started his World Series MVP campaign with a complete game in Game 2, which, 4-hit, 105-pitch masterpiece. Dodgers won 5-1. And much like Game 1, that was a game where outside of that early, got a home run off of him in the first inning, and then it was just never close.
And was the second complete game in a row, because he had one obviously in the National League Championship Series. And Will Smith, who would play another big role later on in the series, had the big home run breaking that 1-1 tie.
Yeah.
And that's all they needed, right? Once it was 2-1, it was game
over.
over.
Smith only had 2 home runs in the series, but they probably were the biggest home runs he could have possibly hit.
So I think the Blue Jays felt they needed to win that game in Toronto to kind of get on top of the Dodgers to win that series, and they did exactly what they wanted to.
Right.
All was good. After Game 1.
And then Game 2, Yamamoto comes out and dominates, and you had to be a little bit nervous going into Game 3 about what you're going to get. You've got Max Scherzer on the mound going against Glasnow, and we only get, I don't know if we're going to call this the greatest World Series of all time. That might be the greatest World Series game of all time.
And that's why it's a candidate for the greatest World Series, because there was more than just this crazy game. And let's talk about Scherzer, because before the game, I kind of put out there that I thought Scherzer was going to get hammered. He really didn't get hammered.
No, he gave them quality innings.
Throwing 96 at age 41.
Somehow
he reached back into the time machine.
Right. I don't know how he did that. I think though that to me, if I'm Max Scherzer, I would look at those 2 starts and say, I can go out on the world's biggest stage and perform against the best competition. How could he not come back next year?
And interestingly enough for Scherzer, as soon as they tapped him to start Game 3, he looked at the manager and said, I know who's starting Game 7. So didn't know there was going to be a Game 7
But
at
he
that
knew
time.
it was going to
but
be
he
him.
knew starting
And
that
I thought
game.
it was very interesting after that whole thing, I don't know, I want to call it kerfluffle because it was just fun where he refused to come out of the game the other time.
Oh, yeah, the look of death, right?
Where when Schneider came out to get him in Game 7 last night, Max gave him the ball, didn't say a word.
Yeah, he had it there. So, the Game 3 was, I guess an all-time World Series game almost. It was not the longest game by time ever. It was 6 hours and 39 minutes, I believe, and the all-time record was in 2018, the Red Sox.
Also featuring the Dodgers.
Yes, exactly, and that went 7 hours and 12. Some baseball game goes 7 hours.
Right, which tells you, though, I'm going to say this, that's the effect of the pitch clock, because the pitch clock over an 18-inning game
Say 40 minutes.
shaved almost an hour off the game. That's a big difference.
That's a good point. So and there's so many plays in that Game 3, right? That made it because
Shohei's second home run to get the game back. Yeah. Game close again. Some of the missed base running errors that you had later in that game, and just all of the things that happened where just no team could ever get it done in the extra innings, inning after inning.
Well, let's talk about Shohei because he was at the plate 9 times in this game.
Reached base 8 of them.
All of them.
Oh, right.
No,
And he became the first player to reach base 8 times in a World Series game.
So he did it 9 times. So the old record was 7.
Right.
And so that was amazing. And then you had what I thought one of the great baseball plays was it was going to be put up there when Vlad Jr. scored from first and daringly ran home on a play reminding me of Enos Slaughter in the 1946's Mad Dash, as it was called by a lot of people. Well, Vlad would have been remembered for the ages, except that they didn't win the game.
Right.
So it kind of gets lost a little bit there. And so many guys, contributed in that game in 18 innings that, you had Will Klein come in who didn't pitch at any other point in the World Series. I don't think he pitched in the playoffs. I can't remember him pitching in the playoffs at all. And he not only pitches, he pitches 4 innings, which is the longest he's ever pitched.
The bullpens in that game combined for 450 pitches. 8 relievers for the Blue Jays over 12 and 2/3 innings, with the Dodgers throwing 9 relievers going 13 and a third. That's just like they threw games worth of, and so that made the rest of the series so interesting because you could tell the rest of the series they didn't have any bullets left in their guns.
And Springer, that's the game where Springer went out in the 7th with an oblique problem that held him out of the following game as well. But to play what ended up being 12 innings or 11 innings without George Springer in a game that went 18 innings, that really hurt them a lot. Him not being able to play.
Yeah, and Ohtani was walked 5 times in that game, 4 of them intentionally, which I'm sure was, much to some people's annoyance because we all want to see him hit every time.
And he had 4 extra base hits with the 2 homers and the 2 doubles.
Right.
So even that in and of itself, I think, was a record to have 4 extra base hits in a World Series game.
What a game from him at the plate, but it's so interesting because he has that incredible game at the plate in Game 3, and then he comes out in Game 4 and he's pitching, and he throws 6 innings, but he gives up the 2-run home run to Vladdy in Game 4. And he just never looks comfortable at the plate in that game.
How about he was tired?
Okay, yeah. I think all of those teams were just tired, and Shane Bieber and the Blue Jays bullpen came in, shut it down. They won 6-1, even though it was 6-2, but Varland gave up a run in the 9th, so it just was really never close. And when they won that game that way, I thought I had a feeling that, oh man, the Blue Jays are going to win this series. Like when they got that game, it's like, wow, they bounced back after that back-breaking loss in Game 3, and they win Game 4 pretty handily. And I'm like, oh, they might have a real shot. And then obviously Game 5 comes around, and Davis Schneider literally jumped all over Blake Snell.
Snell in that first by hitting a home run, and Snell he didn't really pitch bad after that, but he gave up, early, and the Dodgers were swimming upstream the rest of the game.
Right. They looked tired. The team looked frustrated. Trey Savage struck out 12 and was brilliant in his start.
That splitter that night was unbelievable.
And it was close until Eduardo Enriquez came in the 7th, and with two out on a wild pitch, all of a sudden, boom, runs started coming in. Wild pitch, single, 6-2, game's out of reach.
And Henriquez never saw the light of day again in the rest of the series.
No.
And this was going to be a theme with Dave Roberts.
Right, because
who just said, you're a relief pitcher? No, you're not.
Because that's what happened in Game 6 and 7. So we go back to Toronto. The Jays are up 3-2, and Toronto has to be thinking, oh, we've got this. And Yamamoto comes out and stifles them over 6 innings. And we saw at the end of that game when I believe it was who was it off the bat of? Was it Jimenez? It was Jimenez was
right,
at the plate.
Jimenez hit the ball the
Andres
other way.
at the plate, and he hits the ball the other way. And Kike, against what was on his card apparently, was playing shallow, comes charging in, catches the ball very easily, and makes an on-target throw to second base, doubling Addison Barger.
On a great scoop by Rojas.
Right, on a great scoop, doubling him off of second base, and the game's over. And it was just like, it was such a shocking way for that game to end because it was 3-1. They had second and third. There was one out. Like, oh, the Jays are coming back here. We might see a crazy World Series win. Boom, game over. Game 7 tomorrow night.
Interesting now when you think about how Game 7 ended, because the same thing, it was a sudden. We'll talk about that.
And when we talk about some of the reasons why this series ended up that way, because we get into Game 7, it's a
Game 6.
Well, that was Game 6 we
right,
just talked about. We get to Game 7 now, and you have a game started by 2 Hall of Famers with Scherzer and Ohtani. They're both going to be there. And Ohtani was throwing hard. He just didn't look like his dominant self.
He was tired.
Everybody, the only person that had to be more tired than him was Kevin Gausman because everybody else pitched for these teams.
Yeah, it's funny because you're right. All the Dodgers starters who pitched in the series pitched in that game, and 3 of the Blue Jays starters, and Bassett pitched too. He didn't start any games, but he's certainly a starting pitcher, and they used him in a relief role in the series. And Gausman never got off the bench or never came in.
And we had an unsung hero come out of nowhere in Miguel Rojas hitting an all-time postseason home run with one out in the top of the 9th inning to tie the game.
Hadn't had a home run since early
September 19th.
September 19th. He got a hanging slider, they called it. It didn't look like to be that bad a pitch. Jeff Hoffman, the guy who threw it to him, blames himself for that and says, "I cost my team the World Series. I have to live with this, for the rest of my life."
Good on him for owning that.
A little hard on yourself.
You got to go back
there.
to Shane Bieber giving up then a home run to Will Smith in the 11th inning, and it wasn't like the Blue Jays didn't have chances to score in that game.
Well, you had 2 guys thrown out at the plate in the 10th inning, which is amazing in and of itself.
And right, because I think one of the things that you could say is when you look across this series, it did feel like the Blue Jays generally outplayed the Dodgers. Like their wins were more dominant. Really, with the exception of Yamamoto, it felt like the pitchers on the Blue Jays were better. But at the end of the day, the Dodgers found a way to win 4 games in this series. And I think one of the big things you can point to, like last year, the big difference between the Dodgers and the Yankees was the defense.
The Yankees defense.
The Yankees defense. Well, the defense between the 2 teams. In this series, the big difference between the 2 teams was their base running.
I agree.
The Dodgers base running got them extra runs, and the Blue Jays base running definitely cost them runs.
Yeah,
in the series.
Addison Barger, his play to get doubled off to end the game on a 7-4 double play.
Isaiah kind of Falefa in that. I think it's the 9th inning when he gets thrown out by Miguel Rojas at home plate. Gets a terrible secondary lead.
Now, he was told to stay close to the base. And so basically he was only like 5 feet off the base where you would normally be taking off.
If he was literally any more feet off the base, he scores on that play, and this is a different game.
So every little thing, and you're right about the base running, went the Dodgers' way when it came to base running and making those little plays.
And you saw it come up in Game 7, especially multiple times. Yes, Bo Bichette had that big 3-run home run earlier in the game, but both him and George Springer multiple times in that game got into situations where you saw they were on the base paths and they couldn't run in the way that they should because they were hurt. They couldn't score on balls where they maybe could have scored, and that really ended up costing the Blue Jays, which is a terrible position for them to be in, but it definitely affected them.
Yeah, Bichette in the 2nd inning of Game 7 is on second base and a base hit to the outfield, and he got to third. He couldn't turn and go home, and just any one of those runs could have been the difference in the game that went into extra innings. So it seemed like the 2nd inning's a long time in advance to be thinking about, well, that was a run that cost them the game, but it might have.
And I think it was interesting, we talked about in this series, the Blue Jays seem to hit all these multi-run home runs, or the Dodgers just, peppered solo home runs, because you look at that game last night, 4-2, bam, Max Muncy solo home run, which is going to get lost in the shuffle of that game a little bit much. That was in the 8th inning, and that was a huge home run for Muncy.
It was a bomb, too, 370 feet.
And now all of a sudden 4-3. Boom, 4-4, Miguel Rojas home run. Boom, 5-4, Will Smith home run. So those 3 solo home runs were the difference in that game.
Oh, the difference was the guy that had pitched the night before comes in Yoshinobu Yamamoto, and he throws 2 2/3 innings of relief, and his own teammates were in utter disbelief of what this guy was doing. I can't believe, and as he came in, and the first pitch he throws is a 93-mile-an-hour slider, and they're like, dude, he's as good as he always is.
Right.
How can he be doing this?
That's a legendary. Like I think that's going to go up in the annals of pitching history. That's like Curt Schilling bloody sock game level of impressive to throw a complete game in Game 3. start game 6 and complete game in game 2, brilliant start in game 6,
Right.
and then come in and throw 2 2/3 lockdown at the end of the game to win the World Series for your team. I mean, if you look at the signings that they've made, between Roki Sasaki, Shohei, and Yamamoto, the fact that the Dodgers went and got these 3 guys from Japan, they were a big reason why they won this World Series.
The difference in the series, and you're right. I mean, you will go down the lineup and you see how the Blue Jays had so many players that performed at or above their expectations.
Springer, Vlad Jr., Barger, Kirk, Clement. I mean, Andres Gimenez hit 150, but it felt like he was hitting the ball as hard as anybody.
He had to hit the hardest 150 I've ever seen. And then Clement, right? And people are going to forget about Ernie Clement. I was thinking about Matt Clement. I don't guess his dad, and another MLB player. And
30 postseason
30 hits, and the guy just kept on making the hit and getting. And of course, he also hit the ball that
Andy Paez makes an
jumped over
unbelievable
to catch,
play.
and that's a huge play that kind of gets lost a little bit.
And all the Dodgers little guys stepped up because Betts and Freeman didn't have a great World Series. Shohei had a game 3, but that was really his only superlative game.
Teoscar didn't do anything.
Paez was literally so bad they had to bring in Rojas, who stepped up unbelievably. Will Smith and Muncy were probably their most consistent hitters.
Yeah, and I think Will Smith shined brightest here. He caught 73 innings in the World Series.
That's just
that's
impressive.
only 7 games. I'm not. Oh, that's right, because they had the 18-inning game, so he averaged more than 10 innings a game.
And Dave Roberts outmanaged Schneider, but that really more feels like it's on Roberts just pushing all of the right buttons than Schneider making mistakes.
Well, that's how. Yeah. I don't think Schneider managed a bad series at all. I thought that the amazing thing is putting Paez into the outfield, literally like a play or two before they hit the ball, that he jumped over Kike to catch, going, "How did you know?" And then the next inning, he takes Paez out of center field and he puts Justin Dean in there and he puts Paez in right field. So yeah, you're not gonna. We got a guy who's better than you.
Right. And they played for the defense, but yeah, the Dodgers, what we saw here was a referendum on their organizational greatness. That this is a team that they're going to be competing
Their
for.
bullpen was severely depleted this year, and as you said in the Power podcast, so we just won't use them.
We just won't use them. Right. This is the team. They understand that they can get to the playoffs now and turn it on. That's what they demonstrated to me this year, which makes them really scary because they can coast regular seasons now.
Well, and I will say, I had been saying all along that everything was sort of towards the end of the season coming out right. Like Shohei was coming back ready to pitch. All their guys had been
all lined up.
All of a sudden, they were all back in fine form as the World Series started. And yet, you could argue that the Blue Jays starting pitching held their own against,
right. And I think the Blue Jays, in a lot of ways, Blue Jays would. I'm sure there are Blue Jays fans that feel like they should have won that World Series. And you know what? You could probably make the argument that they probably should have, but they didn't.
Against any other team, as I think Freddie Freeman said, the Blue Jays probably win the World Series. This Dodger team just never let themselves feel like they were beaten, even when they were down to their last 2 outs.
Even down to their last out. At no point in the series did they beat themselves. I think the Blue Jays have the lineup is there, that as long as that lineup is there, they're going to have a chance to, be back here next year. I think it's going to be hard to expect the pitching to perform the way it did again, though I think you've obviously found greatness in your Savage.
And, you obviously you didn't get anything out of Berrios because he didn't pitch in the playoffs, and that's a big loss. They bring in Bassett, they bring in Bieber. I mean, that was a brilliant move, I think, by the Blue Jays.
I think you have a lot of reasons to be hopeful that this is going to be, you look like you're the class of the American
League. You might lose Bichette because he's going to be a free agent after the season, but obviously you've promised and paid Vlad Jr., and I think the whole franchise took a leg up, so to speak. Once they paid for Vlad, I think they started believing that, we really are the class of the American League, and we belong here, and it's not a fluke that we're there.
I mean, so we watched the World Series. We watched pretty much every inning of every game. I think, there might have been some late innings of a game, like Game 1, where we didn't watch it, but is it the greatest World Series ever for you?
For me, I don't feel like it outdoes the 2016 Cubs World Series.
You got to take my thunder here.
Well, because it's right.
Right. So that World Series, just that Game 7. This was a crazy Game 7 too.
It was a crazy Game 7, and that was good. And there's been 17 World Series since 1973 that went 7 games. So it happens. right?
2019 wasn't as good. Like 2016 was special.
Right, 2016 was special, and because it was the Cubs winning that first World Series since 1908, the stakes there makes it bigger. Now,
Or at the time, Indians winning their first World Series
would
was
have been
45.
48. Right. No, that's a good point. So you had that stake sort of
Right,
there.
whereas this, you were having a team trying to repeat, and the Blue Jays going for their first since the 90s, but that's not still nearly the same amount of time.
And when you think about winning back-to-back World Series, which is, I guess, if I was rooting during the series, I kind of was rooting for a dominant team a little bit. Not that I dislike the Blue Jays, I like them too, but the Dodgers, and maybe I'm a bit of a closet Dodger fan, having lived out there for a while. To win 2 World Series hasn't happened in the National League since the 75 and 76 Reds.
It's been a long time since it. Yeah.
So now in the American League, you had the Yankees winning, there.
Repeating is an impressive feat in baseball.
Oakland do it in the 70s. So and the Yankees, of course, all those zillions of times they won, 27 World Series. That's,
right, but
that's how you do it.
You don't get a lot of teams repeating in the modern era. So especially, it's really not kind of nice to see that. And that's why I said this is a referendum on the Dodgers' organizational excellence and the fact that this is a team that's going to be back in the hunt next year.
But I guess I didn't think, and we mentioned Dave Roberts, how important good managing is. You have those pieces, you have that arsenal, but you've got to have the guy, and it doesn't seem like, I could manage the Dodgers. You just fill out the Latham card and they'll win. I don't have to do anything.
No, but you got to push all the right buttons.
Right. So now, here we are. The World Series is over. The Dodgers are going to try to three-peat next year, and I think the Blue Jays will be, a contender to win the American League for sure.
And even though we're going into these winter months, hope does spring eternal. As with free agency and all the trades going around, you get to the fun part of the season where you can delude yourself into believing, my team really does have the best chance of winning the World Series.
Right. We're at the dark time of year. So to me, I've been saying this. It feels like winter started today. Right, we had the clocks fall back.
Baseball
so it gets dark
ends.
at 5:00. Baseball's over, and now we're all kind of just waiting for spring training. Now it's only 100 days until
it's
pitchers and
exactly
catchers
100
report.
days.
Exactly 100 days until pitchers. So you heard it here first. 100 days. We will run episodes out, but we will not be this week in baseball. We're just going to do episodes in the off season. If you've got some ideas for stuff that you'd like us to cover or whatnot, we'd love to hear from you. We get great notes from our listeners, and we're happy that we have them and viewers. So I think there's a lot of exciting things still to come up in December. You've got the the Hall of Fame announcements. The ballots go out in December. They get announced in January. You're going to start 2026 with the World Baseball Classic, which is something I think we both really enjoy. And so you'll have games that count in early March, right? Those games count, those WBCs. Well, that's only a mere 4 months from now, so it doesn't feel so bad. And we have baseball, Major League Baseball, in 9 of the 12 months now. That's a little weird to me.
Right. It's a long time, but I'll trade 100 days of winter for 162 days of spring.